Think of a time when you experienced a conversation that left you with a new perspective, or perhaps an inquiry, or you might have felt that something has shifted in you after that conversation. Maybe it helped you gain a new level of clarity, or moved you to take action. That was a coaching conversation. Hello and welcome to the Coaching Conversation. This is your host, Salah Lathi. I am thrilled to have with me today one of the very first people that I learned Agile from, good friend and mentor, and someone that I highly respect in the Agile space, Ahmed Sidky.
Hi, Salah.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Also known as Dr. Agile, I have to say that.
This is the part you're going to cut, right?
Yeah. Maybe. So yeah, Ahmed, you've been in this Agile space for a long time. You're one of the influencers in this space. You're also credited by this idea of the Agile mindset. So before I get into that and just explore that a little bit, how did you get to this point? Like, what has been your journey like? I know you've probably a lot of people heard this, but
yeah,
we want to.
But I'll go ahead and give you the essence of it. I'll bottom line it. So my journey, basically, I started as a software developer actually at a very young age. My dad had a software company, and I fiddled around starting to code at a pretty young age. And then life went on, and I started leading teams, doing this, doing that, and then I decided to do my graduate studies. And I did my undergrad in computer science, so I'm like, let me just do my graduate studies in computer science. And so as I pursued that journey, I did my master's in requirements engineering, and actually we had a roadmap to continue my PhD in the same topic. And I'll tell you this, Salah, it hurt me. It really, really hurt me. The reason it hurt me is as I got deeper and deeper into it, it was just so far from reality. Having, grown up in the industry, literally, I was like, this is a bunch of, I don't want you to bleep stuff out. So, but it wasn't connecting with me. It wasn't resonating with me. And this was back in 2001, 2002. And so I told my advisor, I can't move forward with this. I need to do something different. And he said, so what do you want to do? And I said, I'd love to invent or create or discover a process that works the way people actually work, not just theoretical. And I remember him looking at me, and he said, good luck. I don't know if that exists. And I went out doing my, graduate thing and researching, and I really stumbled upon the Agile Manifesto, and then, started really going deep into XP and Scrum, and fell in love with the mindset, truly. This is a humanistic approach. It acknowledges fundamental truths that I believe it's like people don't know what they want till they see it and experience it. Yet we spend so much time not doing that. Just didn't make sense to me. And then the other thing is, like, we want to learn. We want to constantly learn, but we work in ways that don't encourage us to integrate what we learned. Just didn't make sense to me. So long story short, I decided to do my PhD in Agile. And that was an uphill battle because no one in my school at that time, Virginia Tech, knew what Agile was more than this is the stuff, little website people want to do and use. And no, this is not real software engineering. You can't do a PhD in this. And it was a journey. I'll never forget the dean walking into one of the milestones to do my PhD. He's like, you have 20 minutes to convince me why this is even worth my time listening to. I don't believe in this thing. And so anyway, did my PhD in this, and then went out, worked at AOL a couple of years, and then really started consulting as I wanted to really help organizations sort of see a different mindset. And at that point in time, a lot of the Agile that was being done was a lot of very tactical, very practice oriented, not mindset shift. It was, okay, we'll do 2-week iterations, but it was like writing requirements on sticky notes and calling it stories. And it was like, and again, this was back in 2006 and 2007. So it was still at the can't believe it's 2020 right now. Yeah. But anyway, that all really pushed me to really focus on this idea of it's about a culture of learning. It's about a mindset shift. There's practices, no doubt, right? But it's bigger than just the sort of process practices that we focus on when we think about Agile. It's leadership, it's culture, it's everything. So that's my journey.
Yeah, it's fascinating that this has happened back in 2006. Now we are in 2020. How have you seen a difference between when Agile started in that time and now? Because it sounds to me like just the story that you mentioned about you trying to convince the dean of Agile, that's still happening in organizations to some extent. So that's what have you seen?
I think there is a shift. I'll be honest. Like I'm really happy with where the world is starting to see Agile, and despite the disastrous nature of the COVID situation and the loss of lives, from an Agile perspective, it has been an impetus for change for a number of organizations. I think the accelerator to change for a number of organizations right now is COVID-19. It's not the CTO, it's not the CEO, it's the reality of the situation. And but more importantly for me is more and more companies today understand that Agile is more than Scrum or XP or a bunch of practices. They understand that it is a fundamental shift in how we think about business value and how we think about customers and how we think about culture and learning and individuals and management and all these things that really encompass what I love about Agile is more accepted. So that's really encouraging to me. And then the other thing is, I've been on committees for many PhD students doing their dissertations in Agile now. And, in the academic world, in the corporate world, for some, Agile is still a bad word because they've had bad experiences with them. And part of my life mission is to reclaim the good in that space. And I mean, the co-founding of IC Agile and the work we were doing there and with the Business Agility Institute, it's really trying to preserve what I believe is a great paradigm for people to operate in. But as with anything at scale, you'll have people that boil it down to things that lose its essence. Let's put it that way. And that's part of what I want to do in life. It's to preserve that essence.
Yeah. And speaking of the essence, you were probably one of the first people who started this idea or introduced the idea of mindset in the Agile community or the Agile space. Usually, I mean, this podcast, I try to explore coaching and not specifically for Agile, but Agile is a big part of this. Especially, I can't have Dr. Agile on the podcast and not talk about Agile. but I like the idea of mindset because it talks about the growth and fixed and how that relates to Agile. So can you say more about that? Like, how did you come up with this idea of mindset, and how did you start introducing it to the Agile world and to organizations?
Yeah. So when I first got into Agile, I was struggling as people that didn't know what Agile was asked me, "What is Agile?" And I struggled because I know it's not a process. Right? Many people called it a methodology at that point, the Agile methodology and so forth. And maybe that's true, but for me, it was a lot more. It was a paradigm shift. It was a shift in the way you see things. And I think that's what motivated the word mindset for me. And thank God I wasn't the only one talking about this at that point in time. I know Linda Rising was at that point also talking about a mindset. And so it was a bunch of us that were like, no, this is deeper, right? This is not about the tools and the practices. It's about an orientation. It's about a way of thinking. And the way of thinking for me is grounded in this culture of learning, right? Hence the whole fixed and growth mindset, the work of Carol Dweck. And it was just like this feeling inside of me is like, if people understood it. And part of my, I guess, motivation was the work of Carol Dweck, talking about one of the most important pieces of helping people develop a growth mindset is the awareness that there are multiple mindsets, that there is a fixed and there is a growth. And that really was like, oh, wait a minute. So by, extension, if people understand that there's an agile mindset and a non-agile mindset, by the mere definition of that could help move people to be more self-aware of when they exhibit behaviors that are aligned with a growth or learning mindset versus those where the way I articulate it is the fixed mindset is the fear of learning because I don't want to be wrong, right? And extrapolate that across how we build software and how we run businesses and how we take risks and how we run experiments versus, no, because I don't know, I want to run more experiments quickly, right? That's not a tactical change. That's a paradigm shift. I see the world in two different ways. And then once I see it in this new way, yes, give me now the tools and the practices to help me sustain that, right? So that's always how I've seen it. But it really started, the impetus for it was like, I don't know how to explain this to people because of how I saw it and what it did to me.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned earlier this idea about culture and learning and trying to introduce it or bring that essence of mindset can shift the conversation on what do we need to do to like how do we want to be as a company or as even, I mean, at the individual level, that's still relevant because I think that's the unit of any company is a person, right? And that's where they start to the learning journey. And so I know you wear many hats. You are the IC Agile founder. You work in Riot Games as the head of the Business Agility, and you're involved in Business Agility Institute. So many different areas. And so, what's the theme in these different roles? Where do you see the like overlap and like contribute to your mission, as you said?
Great question, and I'll take the opportunity to also explain maybe why I wear these many hats. So let's start with IC Agile, actually. So when IC Agile was founded, the main mission there was, as more and more organizations will start to look at Agile, we want to make sure that people understand what do they need to learn, right? To number one, realize this new mindset that we're talking about, but more importantly, also build the competency necessary to operate in this new paradigm, right? And so when Alistair and myself and others founded IC Agile, that was really the impetus. It's how do we articulate the set of learnings from a methodology neutral perspective? Because the only thing at that point was around Scrum. And not that Scrum is good or bad, it's just Agile is beyond that. But most of the learning was heavily around a methodology. Just like today, there's SAFe, there's Scrum, there's, less, et cetera, DAD, all of those are really good if you want to learn the methodology. But if you want to learn more about agility as a whole, that's where I think the mission of IC Agile came to light. So if you're connecting the dots for me as a person, so that sort of, and I'm a very passionate person about education in general. And I remember a conversation with the late David Hussman, who was at one point also working with Alistair and myself around starting IC Agile. And I remember one day complaining to him about the certification and learning space. And I remember him telling me, stop complaining, either do something about it or stop complaining. And I remember, you know what? I'm going to do something about it, right? And that's really where the start. But that's
a good advice.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many people that complain about stuff, but okay, are you gonna be part of the problem or part of the solution, right? So for me, it was all right. I want to do something about this, but that was a huge undertaking, like to establish an accreditation body, and what we wanted to do is. It's not about, because it wasn't about a methodology. It was sort of who are the experts in the community around these different, different domains of agility, the coaching, the development, and so forth, and then bring them together and let's articulate together and create something that the world can benefit from. So that's the IC Agile story. When Evan and I co-founded the Business Agility Institute, it was very similar impetus, which is Agile is more than just IT. It's more than just development, similar to how Agile was more than just Scrum at that point. It's more than just IT. This applies across the business. How are we going to get that message out there, right? Yeah. Let's talk to more people. Let's have conferences. Let's develop content. Let's bring leaders together. And so that's sort of been a life journey for me. It's, okay, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to do something about it. And I've been extremely fortunate to partner with amazing people throughout my career. So why Riot Games? I think that's another thing. Like, okay, just being involved with IC Agile and BAI easily could consume all my time. Why Riot Games? Many reasons. One, when I first got introduced to Riot Games, and for those who don't know Riot Games, I highly encourage you to read more about it. I was mesmerized by the founders. For the past sort of, I think at that point, almost 8 or 9 years, I've been consulting with companies, helping them and trying to help leaders really understand this paradigm shift, this mindset shift. And I met 2 amazing individuals, Brandon Beck and Mark Merrill, who got it, who were running a large organization, doing amazing things in the world, and really, really understood it. Understood the essence, and we're trying to truly build an agile organization from scratch. And at that point in time, very few companies, very few CEOs and founders of companies really got what this is about. They got it, they understood it, and they were operating it. And so when they approached me, they were just one of my clients, really, at that point. And when they approached me, I don't know if I've ever said this story on camera, but we'll go ahead and say it. But I did a consulting gig with them. On record, yeah. Yeah. I was contracted to do this engagement with them. And I'll tell you this, it went really, really south. It went really bad. And it wasn't due to lack of preparation or anything, but we took a really bold risk, right? And it just didn't pan out. And as a consultant, I thought that was it. It's over, right? Why would they? That's when they asked me to join. And I'm like, what? Why would you ask me to join with this huge investment? It just didn't pan out. It failed. And they said, because you took a risk, and we wanted people that will take a risk. And even in that, engagement, it got better over time. So you learned and you adapted, and that's awesome. That's what we want. We want to hire leaders that are entrepreneurial in nature, and they want to do this. And at that point, for me, it was, I wanted to always maintain like my hand in the machine, right? It's really easy as a consultant or to get removed from reality. And for me, at that point, I was also really just dipping my toes into not just agile for technology or for delivery, but what it means to run an agile organization. And that's what they wanted me to come and do, like help us grow and maintain our agility as we scale and grow, and help us run it as an agile business. And at that point in time, how many opportunities were there to not just hear about these stories, but be in a position to craft it. And so it was a no-brainer for me that I want to learn. I am a lifelong learner. And if I am not learning, I am dying. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, having someone amazing to work with like Shannon Ewan for IC Agile and Evan for BAI, it really enabled me to, okay, I can go and be in the heart of what I believe is one of the greatest experiments of business agility at Riot Games. And then very clearly, when I joined Riot, they knew about IC Agile and BI and everything, and they were fine with it, and even committing some of my time to it, because part of their mission is, we don't want this to be just the way we work. If the whole world works this way, it will be better for customers and better for players. And so there's this beautiful symbiotic relationship where I'm learning a ton being in it. And then those learnings are finding their ways to BAI, to IC Agile. And honestly, Evan and Shannon are probably running those organizations much better than I would.
I like what you were saying about this. I mean, the theme is coming up, as you mentioned, like this idea of learning. I mean, you're not just expressing or explaining the agile as a mindset. You're living it as you do the work. And so that's one thing. The growth mindset is constantly there.
Yep.
And then the other thing, one of the biggest thing I also learned from you is this idea of being and doing, right? So it's not just the being and starting to look at just the research things and how to make them better, but also experimenting with them and applying. So how, like a lot of people might think that, how do you balance those things? Like not the three roles. I'm talking about like, how do you balance the being and the doing? Those, is there anything that you have found?
It's pretty simple in my head. The doing is in support of the being, right? The being is the essence. Because if you are agile, right, then you can change depending on the circumstances that change around you. If you're grounded in the doing, you're more attached to the tools and the process than the change needed at that point in time. So for me, and interestingly, if you're just being and not doing, well, I don't know what the hell you are, right? But if you're doing without being, you are, for me, it's the difference between sort of knowing the depth of things and knowing just how to do things. So I can teach someone a set of steps on how to do things, but for them to modify those steps, that's why, also one of the things I learned from Alistair that really had an effect on me was the Shuhari sort of model of, first you learn how to just repeat and execute on a recipe, then you learn how to modify it, and then you learn how to create. And for me, agility, true agility, is navigating any constraints or barriers that come between you and delivering value or delight to your customer. And so to do that, you need to be in the space of creating ways of working that are suitable for your team, for your environment, for the business you're in. Like, I give this example all the time at Riot. We ship major events like the Super Bowl, and we ship software, and we ship network infrastructure. We ship different things. It's not going to all be the same process, but it's all grounded in the same being agile, being flexible to navigate the circumstances around you. But you can't just apply Scrum across the board to how you run the Super Bowl, for example. No, there is a fixed date, and you will ship. And the scope is known up front because there's a massive production, But all that, and again, the intricacies of this really goes back to, it's about both, but one is in service of the other. It is, in essence, the agility, the biggest bang you're going to get for your agile buck is in the being, but then you have to do the doing to manifest that being.
Yeah, it's almost like, I like to think metaphors help clarify things, but it's almost like, this idea of having some sort of a direction around where you're going as a being, and the doing is just kind of how to get there can vary, is navigating it. Yes. Using different routes. If you would talk about like a navigation or so that
when I used to coach teams, I used to tell them that I coached teams, then had to go to do other teams and other companies. I said, if I came back whenever 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you're still doing what you're doing, then and you didn't change anything, then you're not being agile, right? If you're following that recipe, and again, this was a more mature team. My expectation of a mature agile team is that you're experimenting, you're trying different ways of working, and you're always, that continuous improvement engine is always on.
It's like being stuck in traffic. If you're,
I live in LA, so I understand that. Yes.
There's no way to move forward, and if you're not thinking about different routes to take or different ways of how to get there, then like you said, you're not learning. You're just repeating the same thing and not being agile. Even in the dictionary definition of the word, not just agile as the software development as we know it. So that's the balance. Being and doing is usually goes into a lot of different debates around, okay, we have to do things, and then we have to be, and then like you said, if we're constantly just focused on the being, then we don't get anything done, right?
and if you focus just on the doing, you may get things done the wrong way, or you miss massive opportunity.
Yeah. So you've written a book early in your journey. It was actually becoming agile. I like this word a lot, the word becoming, because it's not just the being and the doing, but it's also, as you are balancing those two things, you're becoming. It's almost like you're iterating. Not just on the work, but on your version, the version of yourself is
100%.
Iterating. So
100%.
And so becoming, what was that, the kind of the impetus behind this book, the writing of this book?
Yeah. So this was with Greg Smith, and basically the whole title is Becoming Agile in an imperfect world, right? So that was a lot of the impetus is it's the reality. It's the imperfect world that we live in. Yes, great. We read things in Agile books that sound great. Let's do it. But there's a reality, right? And part of change is meeting people where they are and taking them on that journey, right? I think sometimes we're too harsh and we expect people to already be on the journey. And why aren't you joining so fast? Why aren't you changing so fast? And yet it may have taken us years to actually come on that journey ourselves. So I think what we wanted to do with the book is a couple of things. One, give people a practical aspect to things. So again, I look at the book today and there may be a lot of things I want to change, as I've learned a ton in the 12 years since it's been published. But at that time, it was really almost a book that provided a journey for people, right? How to understanding what the mindset is, understanding what the Agile Manifesto really meant, because it wasn't those words on the paper. There was a deeper meaning and mindset shift behind those, and we really wanted to emphasize those. How do you assess what you can or can't do? There are very real constraints on the agility of an organization, right? Funding models, the buy-in, et cetera, et cetera. And if you try to do too much, that's where a lot of companies had a really bad taste from Agile. And Agile is the A word. It's a bad word because there's a change capacity. There's an understanding for change. And if you overload that, the implications are pretty negative, actually, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't adopt user stories fully. Here's a different alternative. So it was all about these things that you can do to sort of bridge the gap and understand what your true capability for change and for agility, not to dampen the aspiration, but to enable inspiration to actually take a step forward, and that it is possible to become agile even in an imperfect world.
Yeah, are we ready? I know you had also like in the past worked on something called Ready for Agile. We kind of worked on together, and then it's the idea like what are we ready for right now, right? What can we start with rather than just, kind of like overwhelming the system. I mean, even at the personal level, if we think about how we change as people, too many changes can get us stuck, like we overwhelm us and we don't really know how to focus. So when you work with a company or even in your role, how do you know the team or the company is ready for change?
So there's several dimensions of this, and I'll try to not ramble for a long time. But number one, resistance for me is an indicator, right? So I believe that there's an alignment that needs to happen between education and systems. So if you look at an individual, they have their values, beliefs, mindset, whatever, and then they live in an ecosystem that explicitly or implicitly promotes certain values, beliefs, mindsets, ways of working, right? Now you come and you want to change both, right? You want to change the individual mindset and you want to change the way they work. Great, noble cause. But here's where we need to, be aware as change agents, right? When I look at readiness, I look at what is the level of resistance that I'm getting, right? And part of that could be, yes, there will be people that will just not be ready to go on this journey, right? And you need to weed them out. But when the overwhelming majority is resistant or there's too much skepticism, what that tells me is we haven't done our work in being ready first, whether that's being educating, right? Inspiring, explaining, showing the difference, explaining our choice, why we are going with this choice versus other choices, and what were our other choices, right? Are we doing Agile because everyone else is doing it? Are we trying to change, our cadence or our funding model or whatever it is, whatever we're trying to do? Why, right? People want to understand the why, right? And way too often we jump right into the how without explaining the why or the what. Again, Simon Sinek stuff, but it's really, so one indicator is resistance, right? When I see resistance, that tells me, it's like, wait a minute, have I not invested enough in that? And I'll tell you something, Salah, it takes a lot of touch time, right? It takes a lot of one-on-one individual discussions. And way too often, what I see leaders, and the higher you go up the chain there, their most valuable resource is time. And so It is much easier to stand at a podium or record a video and say, here's what we're going to do, and go do it, right? That's not what we're talking about. When we want to change hearts and minds, it does require, like, it's the labor of love, right? You got to sit down, talk with people. Now, I'm not asking a C-level to go and talk to everyone, but talk to your next level, right?
Yeah.
Talk to your next level and maybe a skip level. And invest time, because if you win them, they will model the desired behavior and they will be on board. They will be your biggest advocates. But if you compel them, right, and it's just, okay, we want to see compliance, you're not going to get the size of change we want to talk about when we talk about agile. So that's one thing. It's education, right? And that's where coaching comes into play and mentoring and all that kind of stuff. The second, you may do all that and there's still resistance. You're still not ready, because the systems that you have in place are motivating or enabling a different behavior. So you're going against the grain of the organization, right? And that's where the doing part, or the other tactical part. But the interesting part is there's a lot of hidden systems so you want people to collaborate, but you have a compensation model that is not actually encouraging collaboration. It's encouraging individual performance. And sometimes the goal setting mechanism in your organization does not actually play to joint goals. It plays to individual goals. So how do you expect someone to truly change the way they work to collaborate when they're incentivized not to, right? So all that to say, readiness is a really complex topic. Ready for Agile was an attempt to do that. Becoming Agile, the book, has some assessment matrices to look through. But at the end of the day, those are probably outdated, or I've at least, developed beyond that. It's really to understand, don't be too harsh on people when you don't see them change. Understand, sort of take a total ownership perspective, like, what have you not done? Right? As a leader, I have not invested enough in educating, in explaining, right? I have not actually changed the systems that encourage a different behavior. And those are things within my scope of authority as a leader.
Yeah, that is definitely a meaty topic that maybe we can talk about in a future podcast. But, you remind me of this story that's actually, I don't know if I ever told you this, but this is something that we were discussing years ago, and kind of we were sitting together, and I told you about like something that I want to do, and then you just looked at me and said, so what's stopping you? So it's in essence, what you're saying is like, the leaders have to find out what's stopping the people from being ready. Most of the time, there is this traditional leadership that says, go bring me solutions, don't bring me problems, right? So if people are not safe to bring up the problems, then we're never going to be able to clear those blockers and impediments. In coaching, the language sometimes we say, like, you try to bring more conscious or raise the level of consciousness in the system. Yep. And if people are not conscious of what's preventing them or stopping them from moving forward, then how are you as a leader going to know that? So that's a really rich topic.
I agree.
and maybe we can, spend more time at some point talking about it. So this idea of readiness is something that you talk about, like, in terms of, education, finding what's going on in the system, finding what's going on with the people. Is there anything else that you would point us to look at? You mentioned something about like hidden things that are hidden beyond that, what's seen. Is there any way to surface those hidden?
Be very curious. Be authentically and genuinely curious as to why we are usually very quick to be judgmental. This person is this, they're not on board, they're jeopardizing the change, they are just in their best interest. And I say, be genuinely curious. Wait a minute, it's a good person. Why aren't they changing their behavior? Right? And if you're genuinely curious, you will uncover those hidden systems. And you have to ask, and you have to like genuinely be interested in the well-being of people. And this is not kumbaya, foo-foo stuff. You boil an organization down to its humans, right? You boil it down, it is a group of humans, starting from the CEO down to the newest recruit. They're humans, and humans are complex, beautiful creatures that don't respond really well to coercing, right? But if you are, as a change agent, as a leader, are genuinely find the good intent in people and be curious about when you see behaviors that are not aligned with where you want them to go, and all that, is like, dig deeper, like ask, sit down, invest the time, follow the thread, right? And by the way, if you ask enough people, you sit down with enough people, they're obvious. Like the faults in our systems are actually quite obvious. To the point you said, just people don't want to bring them up because they're tired of bringing them up and no changes happen. Some are fearful of bringing them up because of what they've seen for others that have brought them up, right? And what happened to them. So it's just like, and honestly, a lot of them don't bring them up because they don't feel there's any hope, right? So you start to show people hope that, you know what, I'm going to listen and we're going to actually make some change here, and you'll find a lot more people speaking up. But you're not going to know the hidden systems of every organization and what I call the organizational habits, right? Like the muscle memory of what people do because this is how they know to get it done. You as a leader, you're not going to know all of them, but all you have to do is be a good leader, be a human-centric leader, listen, ask people, be curious, and you'll find those hidden challenges and then solve them.
Yeah, that's a lot of curiosity, as you said, and a lot of caring.
But I'll tell you something, Salah. We're in a culture that we don't give enough time and space for things to happen, right? We want it now, we want it quickly. And the collective intelligence that we want to see from our organizations and from our teams take time and space to flourish. And we don't give it. I can't tell you how many times I work mostly with executives, and so it is pulling teeth to get time and space from them, right? But that is one of my charters. Like, no, we will spend, the time on this. And every time we do that, the outcome is better. And my hope, my little dent in the world is hopefully these leaders will see that by spending that time and space, even though they resisted it, they will start to spend more time and space with their teams and therefore bring out the best in others. And again, just to wrap it up, I know we're at time here, but this goes back to learning. What do you want to learn? What do you want? You want to learn about what bothers people. You need to learn how to change yourself, how to grow yourself. Learning is a central theme for me personally, and I'm very grateful to be in the roles I'm in as I'm learning and helping others learn.
Yeah, it's a lot of lessons from this conversation. I wish we have time to keep going. I think this is a good place to wrap it up, and be curious, be a lifelong learner, and care for the people's well-being, and give them space to allow the learning to emerge. Anything else you want to leave us with?
Just enjoy it. It's a beautiful journey. Enjoy it, and don't try to accelerate it too much. Enjoy it. Like when you plant a tree, it may spend a long time underground building roots, and you're like losing hope. It's not coming out. And you can't accelerate it, and you don't want to accelerate it if you want a strong tree. And so just let it. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I love that metaphor, and I think this is a good place to end. Ahmed,
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salah.
It's been a pleasure having you and gaining a lot of insights from you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Hey, thank you for listening. I hope this conversation gave you something to think about or take action on. Remember, take action and get clarity, then repeat.